Hey everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. I am on in this episode with Bryan Harnsberger, who's a psychologist. Hi, Bryan.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Great. So some of you may have caught a video episode that Bryan and I did about self-care. But now, since we're here during Thanksgiving week, we're going to talk some about talking to other people and people you might not agree with. Bryan, maybe for people who did not catch the video episode, which they should go back and do, can you talk a little bit about kind of your background?
So I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm licensed in Massachusetts. I have a doctorate in clinical psychology, and I am currently in private practice.
We did something like this last year before Thanksgiving, but I thought it would be good to do again as the holidays are coming up because a lot of people may be having dinner with family, both at Thanksgiving and in the December holidays, with people who they maybe don't see all the time, people who may have different opinions than they do. Luckily for me, this is not a problem.
Yeah.
My family, at least the very close family that I will be with at Thanksgiving is all politically like me. But I know that's not the case for everybody.
I actually have to go and cross political boundaries myself this Thanksgiving. I have a lot of distant relatives coming up, and they're in a deeper area in Pennsylvania. Mm. So we're going to be having to learn how to kind of settle our differences at the dinner table and see if maybe we can table politics or not. We'll know how to. But it's my foray into having to negotiate with topics outside of my comfort zone, I guess, being in a place outside of my bubble.
Yeah, so I guess that's the thing that people sort of have to tackle first is, you know, do you, assuming you're close enough to people that you still want to see them, if they maybe hold political beliefs that are different than yours or other kind of beliefs that are different than yours, is, you know, do you sort of address things head on and talk about topics that are difficult, or do you try to, you know, avoid those topics altogether? Do you think there is one way or another that's better, or is this something people should just feel out for themselves?
I think it's all, so this is the typical therapist and just punting and saying it's all case by case. But for the most part, I think that what you really have to do is kind of huddle around the like-minded people and kind of have two things. One being a debrief at the end, asking how it went, how issues were settled, how they weren't settled. But initially trying to find your own tribe, if you will, and just kind of prepping them that they're going to be experiencing or can experience some uncomfortable discourse, point of views that may not be fair to them and may actually be offensive, but just trying to figure out how to reason with sometimes unreasonable people. You know, that's always a challenge. So, I mean, I would say feel it out to answer your question, but you can't go into situations 100% blind all the time, because one of the worst things that you can really do is be caught off guard and kind of experience opportunities where your emotions getting into the conversation. You don't want to be that person at Thanksgiving that creates a schism. So I would say no matter what you do, don't judge and don't return anger with anger. So trying your best to prep everyone to keep their emotions in check would probably be the best thing to do up front.
Are there times that you would recommend that someone walk away, either from a conversation or even from, the place where they are if they need to?
I think an escape plan should always happen. Social anxiety. So one of the first that happens to me when I walk into a room is like, I got to figure out an escape plan, whether that be the old French exit or something else. So I think a really important thing to do in these kind of situations is learn how to set limits, and just be like, well, if there's this boundary that they're going to cross, whether it be two-way view or something about pro-choice, I would just be like, this isn't even a conversation worth having right now, because it's just all going to be, it's just going to has a potential to escalate. So if there are any hot button issues for you, be aware of it and be like, this isn't even worth it. I might need to go and get seconds or find a dog to pet. But yeah, I think that, you're going to have to figure out when you're in that room, okay, what can you tolerate, what can't you tolerate, and where can you be if it becomes intolerable.
I recommend having a baby that needs to be breastfed because that's an easy escape.
That would be great. Like any kind of distraction's good, or trying to prep yourself in changing of topics, maybe introduce a new conversation altogether. But that would be a good strategy for sure.
I mean, really, babies are great. Whether or not you're breastfeeding, babies are just terrific for like breaking up. Go up. They got to be changed. They got to be fed. They got to be.
Yeah, they're great. That's kind of like a common ground, and those are some of the things that you really need to look towards. Whenever there's a baby in need, everyone can kind of gravitate and hover around that and recognize that. So sometimes traditions that people have in Thanksgiving, there is that sense of common ground. So maybe focusing on that as well. A great deal of this, of Thanksgiving and trying to deal with people with different ideas has to be built around the idea of empathy. There was this amazing talk that I had a chance to be a part of about a month ago by the psychologist. His name is Charlie Cantor, and he started talking about all different ways to disarm conversation and discussions that seem to be very tribalistic. And of course, the thing that he really points to is empathy. There's organizations like Angels where they try to create reasonable discourse between hard left, hard right individuals. So I think look up betterangels.org as a reference or a resource for you maybe to learn how to bring up certain talking points that might be able to help people find common ground.
Do you think it's worth it for people to try to change people's minds? Is this an opportunity? There aren't that many times in our society right now when people on the far right and the far left are in the same room together. Should we take those moments to try to change people's minds, or is it better to sort of, find things that we all already agree on?
Yeah, you're not going to get any votes. Just have things.
So just focus on the pie is what you're saying.
Exactly. I mean, let's be honest. Whenever there's an opportunity where people get to be around family members, it's going to be tense. So, I mean, a place where they're going to introduce alcohol into the equation. So some people might feel a little bit loose to talk about some controversial issues within the family. I don't think you want to add fuel to your fire and start bringing up why conservatives view things. You can extrapolate what I mean from that, but I think it's just best for people to really kind of limit how much drinking that they're doing, to be aware of it. It would be tense already.
I know that you can't discuss individual patients, but do you find that the holidays are a cause of stress in general for people?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The thing about the holidays is it does have this great ability to bring families together. Certain families are dysfunctional and try to have certain holiday traditions, and it usually goes awry. So a lot of patients that I see have to kind of mentally and psychologically prepare themselves to experience this kind of forced chaos during these times. And oftentimes, holidays, specifically Thanksgiving and Christmas in general, are popular times to mourn and to grieve. Sometimes a lost loved ones or even pets that have been around in the family may not be there. So oftentimes there can be people that will notice a missing person that usually sits at the table. And people are usually in different stages of their own grieving. So just be cognizant of that, especially if you notice that politics is being brought to the table. Maybe a person is experiencing a great deal of depression or anger just based on the fact that there's not a person that they love at the dinner table. And the last thing that they need is to have a controversial topic brought up.
If experiencing these things during the holidays starts to help people realize that, in fact, they need to get help with their own mental health, is there a website or a guide or something that would point people through the steps of seeking help?
So I think one of the best places to start looking for providers would just be doing a quick Google search if there's anything for support for the holidays. I don't know anything off the top of my head, but if they do recognize that it's a big problem and they anticipate that it's going to be something that's going to get in the way of the things that they ought to do over the holidays, hop on Psychology Today. They have an excellent referral list of individuals. Unfortunately, psychotherapy is more or less a privilege right now. You have clinicians that have extremely long wait lists. They only accept certain insurances, and it can be a challenge. So you really have to be invested in the process of finding a therapist that's good for you. And that also might mean just finding someone that really understands what it's like. Therapy is a lot of hard work, and a lot of that work goes on in between sessions. So I hope that in a person's head, they can go through an inventory of how much time, how much money, and how much energy they're really looking forward to investing in trying to create positive behavior change. It's a really, really grueling process, and it might not be pleasant, especially with the first few sessions. But hopefully people that may be experiencing affective disorder or that can be experiencing complicated grief due to reminders such as holidays, that they do seek out some professional help. And if they want to, I'm on Twitter. I'm at PsychHype. And if you really need some assistance and providers, just DM me and I'll do my best to try to point you in the right direction.
Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we talk about?
I think the best thing that we can really do when dealing with these really, really heated times, both around the holidays with people we're not really familiar with, is to just make sure that you discharge your stress and you find ways to get rid of it. So kind of taking care of yourself. If this is a great opportunity to plug our last conversation that we had with self-care, although it's not with Action Day, but it's an opportunity for us to kind of mental health check for ourselves. What kind of areas of need we're facing right now, how can we best address those things?
I want to make a plug, too, for people. This isn't directly related to our conversation, but is another thing for people to keep in mind if they're going to other people's houses for the holidays. If you're not aware of if the other house, if they have guns or how they store their guns, Moms Demand Action has a great website that can help navigate those issues for you. It's besmartforkids.org. And so that's just a really important thing too around holidays when you're in a lot of homes that you might not be in that often. And we'll put a link for that on our website as well.
Oh, this is great. I'm just looking at it right now.
Moms Demand Action puts it out. And so I always like to point to it anytime people talk about not knowing how to have conversations with family members or potential play dates or things about whether there are guns in the home.
Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, I can imagine that politics is one thing, but when you have a firearm in the house, that's definitely something to be definitely a cause of concern.
Yeah. Well, Bryan, thank you for talking with us about this. I hope that everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving and that we haven't scared you away from enjoying your Thanksgiving dinner. But I know it's a cause of concern for people, and so I want to make sure they have some tools going into what may be an otherwise uncomfortable dinner.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I hope you enjoy some turkey.
I'm a vegetarian, so I will enjoy tofurkey.
Very cool.
Along with pie and wine and sweet potatoes and
all the good stuff too.
Maybe we should have also done an episode on how not to overeat.
Yeah.
Everyone go ahead, overeat on Thanksgiving, and maybe we'll be back next week on how to start good, healthy habits.
but for now, treat yourself.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast.